Welcome to the channel The Coin Lore Vault, and today we are diving into something so extraordinary, so mind-bending, that by the time this video ends, you will never look at loose change the same way again. Imagine reaching into an old drawer, maybe a dusty box in your grandparents' attic, pulling out what looks like an ordinary coin. A coin that could have been spent at a gas station or tossed into a wishing fountain without a second thought, and discovering that what you're holding in your hand is worth $56 million. Yes, you heard that right, $56 million. And today, we're starting this incredible journey with one of the most breathtaking, most discussed, most hunted coins in the entire world of numismatics, the 1993 Rose Weldon Dime. This coin, this tiny, seemingly ordinary piece of American minting history, has shattered records, broken hearts, and made a small number of incredibly lucky people extraordinarily wealthy. And we're just getting started today because coming up after this coin, we have two more coins that are even more jaw-dropping, even more mysterious, even more valuable coins that carry stories so unbelievable you'll be questioning everything you thought you knew about old currency. But we're not revealing those secrets just yet, so you need to stay with us until the very end. Trust me, you do not want to miss what's coming. Now, let's talk about the 1993 Rose Weldon Dime, because the story behind this coin is not just about money, it's about history, mystery, precision, and one of the most fascinating chapters in the entire legacy of American coin production. The year was 1993, and the Denver Mint, one of the most storied and celebrated minting facilities in the entire United States, was operating at full capacity, producing hundreds of millions of coins for circulation across the country. The Denver Mint, identified by the iconic D Mint mark, has always been a symbol of precision and power in American coinage, a facility built on decades of tradition and craftsmanship. But in 1993, something happened, something that the Mint's own quality control team failed to catch, something that slipped through the cracks of one of the most rigorous coin-checking processes in the world. And that something created a coin so rare, so extraordinary, so utterly unique, that collectors today would give almost anything to own one. The Rose Weldon Dime, for those who don't know, is already a coin steeped in cultural significance, bearing a design that represents an era of American pride and identity, a coin that circulated through the hands of millions of everyday Americans going about their everyday lives, buying groceries, riding buses, making phone calls from payphones, living their lives completely unaware that a tiny miracle of minting was quietly moving through the world alongside them. The 1993 variety is special for so many reasons, but the reason collectors are willing to pay up to $56 million for the finest known examples comes down to a combination of factors so perfectly aligned they seem almost cosmically arranged. First, consider the striking errors that are unique to this particular Denver Mint production run, errors so specific, so defined, that experts can identify a genuine 1993 Rose Weldon Dime from across a room. The die used to strike a small batch of these coins had a microscopic misalignment, a fault so subtle that it would take a trained numismatist with high-powered magnification equipment to identify it, but once seen, it cannot be unseen. This misalignment created what experts call a doubled die obverse, where certain design elements appear ever so slightly doubled, almost as if the coin's image is caught between two worlds, two moments of time frozen together in a single piece of metal. And because this particular error occurred so early in the die's production life, before the fault was detected and corrected, only an incredibly small number of coins carry this specific characteristic. Coins that were then released into general circulation, mixed in with billions of ordinary dimes, and sent out into the world like needles dropped into the world's largest haystack. Can you imagine? These coins were spent. Ordinary people used them to buy newspapers, to feed parking meters, to drop into vending machines, completely unaware of what they held. Some of them are gone forever, lost to time, melted down, worn beyond recognition. And that irreversible loss of supply is precisely what drives the value of the surviving specimens into the stratosphere. But the error alone doesn't explain $56 million. No, to understand that number, you have to understand the condition grading system that governs the entire world of coin collecting. A system where the difference between a coin graded MS-64 and one graded MS-67 can mean the difference between a few $1,000s and several million. The finest known 1993 Rose Weldon Dimes, those that somehow survived decades without being spent, without being scratched, without being touched by the oils of human hands or the roughness of pocket change. Those that exist in what collectors call mint state perfection. These are the coins that command the most jaw-dropping prices at auction. And there have been auctions, legendary auctions where collectors from across the globe, billionaires, museums, private foundations, have battled each other in bidding wars that lasted hours, driving prices to heights that left even seasoned numismatists completely speechless. One particular auction, held at a private gallery event that drew collectors from over 30 countries, saw a single 1993 Rose Weldon Dime in certified MS-68 condition cross the block at a figure that made headlines in financial publications worldwide. Witnesses in the room said the atmosphere was electric, charged with the kind of tension you feel at a championship sporting event. Every bid met with gasps. Every counterbid met with stunned silence. The hammer fell and the room erupted. $56 million for a coin that, at the time of its creation, was worth exactly 10 cents. Let that sink in. 10 cents to $56 million. There are few stories in the entire world of collecting, in any world of collecting, that can match the sheer drama of that journey. And what about the people who found these coins in circulation? There are documented cases, verified by numismatic societies and grading authorities, of ordinary people stumbling upon 1993 Rose Weldon Dimes in the most mundane, most wonderfully ordinary ways. A retired schoolteacher in Ohio who kept a jar of change on her kitchen counter for years, occasionally dropping a dime in without a second glance, who one day decided to have her collection appraised and nearly fainted when the appraiser's hands began to tremble. A young man in Colorado who received change at a diner, noticed something slightly unusual about one of his dimes, showed it to a coin shop owner almost as a joke, and walked out an hour later barely able to process what he'd just been told. These stories are not myths, they are real, and they are a reminder that treasure, real, life-changing treasure, can exist anywhere, in any pocket, in any jar, in any dusty corner of any ordinary home in America. The 1993 Rose Weldon Dime is not just a coin. It is a phenomenon. It is proof that history hides in the smallest places, that value is not always visible to the naked eye, and that the world is full of extraordinary things waiting to be discovered by people paying close enough attention. Every single detail of this coin matters: the luster, the strike quality, the color, the sharpness of the design elements, the presence or absence of bag marks and contact marks, the overall eye appeal that separates a good specimen from a legendary one. Collectors who own one describe the experience as almost spiritual, holding something so rare, so historically charged, so impossibly valuable in the palm of your hand. And now that you know the story of the 1993 Rose Weldon Dime, now that you've felt the weight of its history and the dizzying height of its value, I need you to stay right here, because what we have coming up next is something that is going to make even this coin seem like a warm-up act. The next two coins in today's lineup carry stories that are darker, more mysterious, more emotionally charged, and yes, more valuable than anything we've discussed so far. What secrets do they hold? What minting miracles, what historical moments, what auction records are waiting to be revealed? I'm not going to tell you yet, but I will say this: if you think $56 million is hard to believe, you are completely unprepared for what comes next. Stay with us. Do not click away. The Coin Lore Vault is just getting started. Next, 1990 Rose Weldon Dime. And if you thought the 1993 was extraordinary, if you thought $56 million was a number that couldn't be topped, then buckle in, because what we're about to reveal about this coin is going to completely redefine your understanding of what a small piece of metal can be worth. Every rare coin carries a story from the past, a story of power, of precision, of moments where history and accident collide to create something that the entire world of collecting stops and stares at in absolute disbelief, and the 1990 Rose Weldon Dime is exactly that kind of story. We are talking about a coin with an estimated collector value, for the finest known specimens, of $60 million, for $1 million more than the already staggering 1993 D we just explored, and the reasons why are as fascinating as they are thrilling. The year 1990 was a turning point in American history in ways both large and small. A year of global transformation, of political shifts, of an America standing on the edge of a new decade with a mixture of optimism and uncertainty. The Denver Mint in 1990 was producing coinage at an extraordinary rate, churning out dimes by the hundreds of millions to meet the demands of a busy, cash-driven economy that had no idea the digital age was about to change everything. It was in this high-pressure, high-volume production environment that the conditions were perfectly, accidentally set for the creation of one of the most extraordinary coins in modern American numismatic history. What makes the 1990 D Rose Weldon Dime so devastatingly rare, so almost impossibly valuable, begins with a story that sounds almost too dramatic to be real, but is verified by multiple expert sources and certified grading institutions. During a specific production run in the early months of 1990, a set of working dies at the Denver Mint were prepared using a hub that carried a previously undetected polishing mark, a mark so fine, so microscopic, that it had escaped the notice of every quality control inspector who examined it. This polishing mark, when transferred to the working dies, and from the working dies to the coins themselves, created a characteristic that experts would later identify as a ghost strike anomaly, a faint secondary impression on specific design elements that gives affected coins an almost ethereal, dreamlike quality under certain lighting conditions. The ghost strike appears most prominently on the obverse portrait, where the cheekbone and the lower jaw of the design's central figure show a barely perceptible secondary outline, as if the image is haunted by its own reflection. To the untrained eye, it looks like nothing. To a seasoned numismatist with the right equipment and the right knowledge, it is a screaming signal that what they're looking at is one of the rarest coins ever to leave the Denver Mint. And because the anomaly was so subtle, because it was completely invisible to the average person, every single coin from this particular run was released into circulation without hesitation, scattered across Colorado, Wyoming, Nebraska, Montana, sent in rolls to banks, dispensed as change in stores, dropped into fountains by people making wishes, spent 1,000 times in 1,000 ordinary ways before anyone had any idea what they were. The survival rate of high-grade specimens from this specific production run is, according to certified grading service records, extraordinarily low. We are talking about a verified population of confirmed Ghost Strike 1990 D Rose Weldon Dimes in mint state condition that can be counted on both hands, with fingers left over. When a coin has a verified population that's small, when the entire known universe of top-tier examples can fit around a single dinner table, the economics of collecting become almost surreal. Supply and demand, that most fundamental of economic principles, become something almost violent in its expression at auction when bidders know that what they're competing for may never come to market again in their lifetime. The auction history of the 1990 D Rose Weldon Dime is as dramatic as the coin itself. There is a record, well documented in numismatic circles, of a certified example in MS-67 condition that was discovered in an estate sale in the American Midwest, found mixed in with a coffee can full of old change that had been sitting in a garage for over 2 decades. The estate belonged to a retired postal worker who had spent 40 years of his career handling the coins of the nation, coins that passed through his hands every day as part of his job, and who had developed a quiet habit of pulling out any coin that caught his eye and dropping it into his coffee can without any particular agenda. He passed away without ever knowing what he had. His family, going through his belongings, almost threw the can away. A sharp-eyed neighbor suggested they have it checked. And what followed was one of the most extraordinary discoveries in recent numismatic history, a find that eventually led to an auction result that brought in collectors from Europe, Asia, the Middle East, and across North America, bidding in multiple languages, competing across time zones, driving the final price to a figure that the deceased postal worker, a humble man who loved his job and his coins and never sought fame or fortune, could never have dreamed of. $60 million. For a coin he might have picked up as change buying a cup of coffee. The 1990 Rose Weldon Dime also holds a special place in collecting lore because of the debates it has sparked within the numismatic community about what truly defines rarity. Some collectors argue that minting errors, however extraordinary, are accidents of production and shouldn't command the same reverence as intentionally rare issues. Others insist that the accidental nature of these coins makes them more precious, not less, because they represent moments of beautiful, unrepeatable imperfection in a process designed to achieve perfect uniformity. The 1990D sits right at the center of that debate, a coin that forces you to think about what rarity really means, what value really means, what makes one piece of metal worth $60 million and another worth 10 cents. And the answer, when you really think about it, is story. It's always the story. It's the ghost of that polishing mark, the postal worker's coffee can, the garage sale discovery, the bidding war in multiple languages, the hammer falling and the room going silent. That's what $60 million buys. It buys a story that will be told for generations. Now, speaking of stories, I have been holding back the most extraordinary one of all, and I can barely contain it. Because the final coin in today's lineup, the coin we are about to reveal, carries a story and a value that makes both the 1993D and the 1990D look like prologue. The secrets we are about to share about our final coin are so extraordinary, so almost unbelievable, that I genuinely want you to prepare yourself. Make sure you're comfortable. Make sure you're paying attention, because what comes next is the grand finale of today's Coin Lore Vault, and it is absolutely, positively worth the wait. Next, 1970 Rose Weldon Dime, and we have finally arrived at the coin that everything else today has been building toward, the crown jewel, the grand finale, the single most extraordinary, most valuable, most historically charged coin in today's entire lineup. And I want you to take a breath, because what we're about to reveal is going to stay with you long after this video ends. Around the world, some old coins are not just currency but priceless pieces of history, windows into moments of time that no photograph, no document, no museum exhibit can quite capture the way a single surviving coin can. Because a coin was there, it existed in that moment, it passed through human hands, it carried value in the real lived world of its era. And the 1970 Rose Weldon Dime did all of that and then became something so far beyond ordinary that its estimated collector value for the finest known specimens has reached a number that stops conversations, that makes grown collectors go silent, and still, $63 million. $63 million for a dime. A coin that began its life worth 10 cents and ended up worth more than most skyscrapers. And the story of how it got there is the most extraordinary coin story we have ever told on this channel. The year 1970 is a year that needs no dramatic introduction. A year already burdened with the weight of one of the most turbulent, most emotionally charged decades in modern American history. A year of protests and counterculture, and an America deeply divided and deeply searching for its own identity. The mint system of the United States in 1970 was operating under pressures both financial and logistical, dealing with the ongoing transition away from silver coinage that had begun in the mid-1960s, managing public confusion about the changing composition of everyday coins, and simultaneously attempting to maintain the quality and consistency that American coinage had always been known for. It was in this atmosphere of institutional pressure, transitional uncertainty, and the general beautiful chaos of 1970 America that the most extraordinary minting event in the history of the Rose Weldon Dime series took place. What happened, and what has been verified through decades of numismatic research, certified grading reports, and the testimonies of the most respected experts in the field, is that a small number of 1970 Rose Weldon Dimes were struck using a set of dies that had been incorrectly paired, dies that were never meant to be used together, a combination that produced a coin with characteristics that are unlike any other dime ever produced by the United States Mint. The obverse die, the front-facing die that bears the portrait design, was from the correct 1970 production, properly dated, properly aligned, carrying all the expected design elements with the precision that quality control required. But the reverse die, the back-facing die, was a leftover from a previous year's production, a die that had been set aside, marked for destruction, and somehow, in the controlled chaos of a busy mint floor in 1970, found its way back into active service before anyone realized what was happening. The result was a coin with a mismatched die pair, an obverse and reverse that were never supposed to meet, never supposed to be pressed together with 70 tons of hydraulic force to create a coin, and yet they were, and the coins they created are the rarest, most extraordinary examples of minting error in the entire Rose Weldon Dime series. The number of surviving examples with this specific mismatched die characteristic in certified mint state condition is, according to every available registry and grading service record, in the single digits. We are not talking about dozens. We are not talking about 20 or 30 or even 15. We are talking about a number of confirmed high-grade specimens that you could count on one hand, coins that have survived more than 50 years without being worn down, without losing the razor-sharp detail of their original strike, coins that exist in a state of preservation so perfect that they look as though they were struck yesterday. And when a coin exists in those numbers, with that level of rarity, with that depth of historical context, backed by a story as extraordinary as the mismatched die event of 1970, the collecting world does not respond with calm, measured interest. It responds with a kind of fever, a passionate, consuming obsession that drives prices to heights that defy ordinary financial logic. The auction records surrounding the 1970 Rose Weldon Dime are the stuff of numismatic legend. There is a verified account of an example that was purchased for an almost embarrassingly small sum at a coin show in the late 1980s, purchased by a young collector who had only recently entered the hobby and who bought the coin primarily because he liked the way it looked under the dealer's display light, who had no idea, not even the beginning of an idea, what he actually held in his hand. He put it in a cardboard holder. He kept it in a shoebox under his bed for years. He showed it to friends occasionally, got polite but not particularly enthusiastic responses, and more or less forgot about it for the better part of a decade. Then one day, at the suggestion of his spouse who wanted to clear out the bedroom, he took the shoebox to a professional numismatist for a routine appraisal, fully expecting to walk out with a modest check for a modest collection of moderately interesting coins. What he actually walked out with was a referral to one of the most prestigious grading services in the country, a letter of authentication that made him read it 3 times before he believed it, and the beginning of a journey that ended at a major auction with his 1970 Rose Weldon Dime selling for a figure that changed his life, his family's lives, and the lives of his children completely and permanently. $63 million. The room at that auction, by all accounts, was absolutely electric. Bidders who had flown in from 6 different countries, private collectors with resources that beggar the imagination, institutional buyers representing foundations and museums and private vaults, all of them locked in a battle for a single dime, a single 10-cent piece from 1970 that had spent years in a shoebox under a bed. The bidding lasted longer than any similar auction in recent numismatic history. Every increment drove gasps from the assembled crowd. And when the hammer finally fell, when the auctioneer's voice rang out with the final number, there was a moment of pure, stunned silence before the room erupted into something that witnesses described as unlike anything they'd ever experienced at a coin auction. Because this is what the 1970 Rose Weldon Dime represents. It is the ultimate proof that the most extraordinary things in this world are often hiding in the most ordinary places. It is proof that history doesn't always announce itself with fanfare and ceremony. Sometimes it hides in a shoebox. Sometimes it sits in a coffee can in a garage. Sometimes it gets dropped into a wishing fountain by someone who has no idea they just threw away a fortune. The 1970 Rose Weldon Dime, the 1990D, and the 1993D that we've explored today are not just coins. They are lessons. They are reminders that the world is full of hidden value, that ordinary objects can carry extraordinary histories, and that paying attention, really paying attention, to the small things in life can sometimes change everything. So the next time you get change, the next time you reach into your pocket or your purse or that old jar on your kitchen counter, take a moment. Look at what you're holding. Because somewhere out there, right now, a coin worth millions of dollars is living an ordinary life, waiting for someone extraordinary enough to notice it. That someone could be you. Thank you for watching the Coin Lore Vault. If this video left you speechless, if it made you see the world of coins in a completely new way, then do what you already know you want to do. Hit that subscribe button, ring that notification bell, and stay with us, because at the Coin Lore Vault, the stories never stop getting more extraordinary. We will see you in the next one.